Good morning, folks. Happy Saturday, and thank you for coming to today's class. I am Coach Ray. I appreciate everybody joining me for today. Now, for today's class, we are still focusing on hips for this month. Now, last week, my class, we did some hovers or lift-offs off the box. So if you happen to have a box, we're going to use that today. If you don't have a box, you can always go with a bench or something that's actually relatively high. We are going to do lift-offs. However, we're not going to go from a straight leg position. We're actually going to go from a bent knee position. So we're still going to work on that hip flexion today. Now, outside of that, we're going to work on abduction. We're also going to get into the Dumpy squat. But what we're going to be focusing on in the Dumpy squat is actually going to be really creating as much external rotation as we can and as much hip abduction. And so the foot stance or the stance width that you're going to go with, it can vary as we go through the exercise, so don't be afraid to do so. If you have an issue with connecting to the glutes, connecting to those external rotators of the hip, you can always add a band onto that exercise, which is something I like to do sometimes. Now, in terms of what we'll need, I have access to all 3 sticks. You will probably need it as well. Right back here, I do have the squat rack. That is going to act as my wall or ceiling for me to push a stick up into. You also notice this beautiful little contraption back here, Bulgarian split squat machine. We're going to use that to stretch out those hip flexors, but you can always, again, go with a bench if you happen to have one. You don't necessarily need that. So let's go ahead and get into our warm-ups. Let's first decompress that spine a little bit. So I'm going to go start with both long sticks here, and I'm going to take my right foot forward, left foot back, and I want to take a pretty wide stance here. I want to have the bottom of the sticks angled to be right in front of the line of my hips here. Both hands are up nice and high. I'm going to wiggle that back foot back a little bit, and I'm going to sink down, and I want to get into a full hang here. You want to make sure you're breathing, and it's just a dead hang. It's not an active hang. Good. I'm going to ease off, and we're going to switch sides. So I'm going to bring my left foot forward, right foot back, find that comfortable position. Make sure your hip is facing forward, and then you're just going to drop down. And make sure you're focusing on that breathing. Going to come up. We're going to switch. Now we're going to add in some rotation. So I'm going to take that left foot back, and I'm going to drop down into it again. Now I'm going to drive those sticks down lightly. So now I'm in an active hang position, and I'm going to rotate the sticks side to side, but just moving at the shoulders. Movements don't got to be huge or big. You just want to make sure the movements are very concentrated. So I want to rotate those shoulders back and forth without moving the hips. Excellent. You're going to come out and switch legs. We're going to do this on this side here. Drop down, drive those sticks down, and then rotate side to side. Nice and smooth. Nice and easy, folks. Make sure you're breathing. Back to center and ease off. Excellent. Now we're going to stretch those hamstrings a little bit. And so I'm going to go with a closed stance. Feet are together, and I want my toes pointed forward. I'm going to have the sticks angled in front of me here, and the sticks are laying on my chest or shoulders. Well, I'm going to take my right foot, I'm going to plant my heel in front here, dorsiflexing that ankle, and we're going to go with a slight bend to that knee. Now from here, I want to keep my hands on top of the sticks because this is going to act as my guide. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to sink my hips back, driving my hands down towards the floor. You want to go until you get a nice good stretch in the hamstrings. Now, you want to try to keep your spine as neutral as you can. And now from here, I'm going to lightly drive my heel down into the floor about 20%, and I'm going to rotate my hip side to side. So I'm going to floss those tissues at the hip. So I'm going to internally rotate, turn my foot towards my center line, and then I'm going to externally rotate, turn my foot or my hip specifically away from my center line. So internally rotate, externally rotate, internally rotate, back to center. We're going to slowly come up, ease off, and now we're going to switch sides. So I'll actually turn to the side here. We're going to do that same thing. So now my left foot is going to be forward. I'm not taking a really big step. It's really, really minor. So now that ankle is dorsiflexed, slight bend to that left knee. The right knee can be bent. I'm going to drive my hips back. Go till I get a stretch in those hamstrings. All right. And if you find that you're starting to do this, you're starting to round, you're going to lose that connection. So you almost want to go into more of an anterior tilt here to access those hamstrings. You're going to lightly drive that heel into the floor, and we're going to start to rotate at the hip. So I'm going to externally rotate away from my center line, and then I'm going to internally rotate. And remember, we want that movement to come at the hip. Externally rotate, good. Internally rotate. Externally rotate, and internally rotate. Let's go one more each way. External and internal. Back to center. Now slowly come up and ease off. I'm going to place one stick down, and we're going to get into some ninja flow. We're going to use this to open up that thoracic spine and the chest. So from here, go with a stance as wide as whatever's comfortable here. Now you can always adjust your stance width however you need to, depending on your level of comfort and also how mobile you are. So I'm going to have the stick in my left hand. It's on the inside of my left foot, and I'm going to have my left hand up roughly around face height here. And now for this, I really, really want you to focus on pulling the stick apart so we get a lot of emphasis on that thoracic and mid-thoracic rotation here. And so I'm going to have my hand up here. I'm going to have my left hand stretched out, and I'm going to hinge back. And as I do that, I'm going to bring the stick closer to my body, and the stick is lined up with my shoulders here, right? We don't want the stick in front of you. You want that stick to be lined up with the shoulder. And from this position here, I'm going to reach down towards the bottom of the stick with my thumb facing down towards the floor, and I'm going to pull the stick apart at 30%. All right, so it's a lot more than we usually do, and you're going to get some more rotation to the left, and now I'm going to lunge to my right by driving off that left leg. Keep pulling that stick apart 30%. You're going to feel a lot of activation in that upper back. Going to come back to center, and we're going to lunge to the right again. Keep pulling that stick apart. Good, back to center, and lunge to the right one more time. Back to center. Gonna let go of my right hand. Gonna slowly come up. Excellent. I'm gonna switch sides now. So it's to my right hand, or right side, and it's roughly about face height here. We're gonna do that same thing. I'm gonna have the arm straight, and I'm going to hinge here. Now you might be getting a nice good stretch in the chest. That's normal, right? If your chest is a little sore, it's gonna feel pretty good. I'm gonna take that left hand, grab it to the bottom of the stick, pull apart 30%. I'm gonna lunge to my left. Back to center, pull apart 30%, lunge to the left, drive off that right leg. Back up. One more time. Keep pulling apart on the stick. Back to center. Let go with that left hand. Come up. Nice and easy. Good. Wiggle those feet in slowly. We're going to take the second stick, because we're going to come back to this here. We're going to work on pelvic tilts. And so what I really want to focus on here, and it's going to be a little weird, we're going to start with anterior posterior, then we're going to bump a hip up, and we're going to do anterior posterior again. And so what we're doing is we're just shifting tension to one side and then getting the hip to move in that particular plane. And so from here, I'm going to go with a wider than shoulder width stance, and I'm going to have the bottom of the sticks roughly in line with my shoulders here in terms of width, and my hands are going to be at shoulder height here. You can always adjust your stance if you need to, but from here I'm going to drop down just a little bit into that horse stance. And again, we want to make sure that the spine is stacked over the pelvis. We don't want to be in a hinge position. We want to be in a nice, good, tall position here. So hands are at shoulder height. Drive those sticks down at 30% tension, and we're going to go into posterior anterior tilt. So first thing, we're going to do posterior. So I'm going to tuck my pelvis in. So the front of my pelvis, or the top of my pelvis, is being rolled back, while the bottom of my pelvis is being rolled forward. So it's this kind of motion with the pelvis. And then I'm going to do an anterior tilt the opposite way. When you do that, you should be feeling those low back tissues fire. Posterior tilt, squeeze those glutes, drive those knees out. Anterior tilt. Good. Posterior tilt. Anterior tilt. Breathe. Good. We're going to go back to a posterior tilt. I'm going to bump my right hip up, and we're going to do that same thing. We're going to do anterior posterior. The movement isn't going to be all that big. So we're going to go anterior, keeping that right hip bumped up. So you're going to feel that right low back and QL tissues fire. Then posterior tilt. As you do that, that right glute's going to fire, but not the left. Anterior tilt. Good. Posterior tilt. Anterior tilt. Good. And posterior tilt. Now we're going to bump that left hip up. Good. Anterior tilt. Posterior tilt. Good. Anterior. Posterior. Keep that left hip bumped up. Anterior tilt. And posterior tilt. Good. Back to center and ease off. Excellent. Good. Now we're going to take the short sticks. We're going to place the long sticks down because we don't actually need that for now. And after we do this next drill, we are going to get into our dumpy squat, where we're going to focus on the hip abduction and external rotation. But first, just want to get that spine moving a little bit. And so, I was playing around with this drill a little bit yesterday. And we're going to have the short stick, we're going to have it on our upper back, like so, right? Kind of on top of our traps here. And what the objective here is, we want to create a circular motion with the ends of the sticks. Now, as we do this here, we're not only getting rotation, but we're also getting lateral flexion and then working into extension. So we're getting the spine to move quite a bit in one swift motion. And so I'm going to actually turn to the side here. We're going to go both directions. I'm going to go with a roughly shoulder width stance, toes are forward, and I'm going to kind of squeeze my glutes a little bit. Now, as we do this, we want to try to keep our hips forward as much as we can to keep from getting into that lumbar. So some glute tightening is suggested. Now from here, I'm going to have my hands on top of the sticks, and I'm going to rotate to my left first. That's the first part. Now I'm going to dip that left side down, right? Only go as far as whatever's comfortable. If it hurts, or if you start to get a little discomfort, bring off that range of motion. Now I'm going to effectively scoop with that left side of the stick until the left side of the stick is coming forward, and I'm going to do the same with the right side. And I want to keep a continuous motion here, and what you'll notice is that the ends of the stick are going in a circular motion. So we're getting a lot of movement in the spine because we're covering effectively all bases. Breathe. Now we're going to switch directions. So now I'm going to go forward. Good. Should be nice and controlled. Again, we're going with the circular motion with the sticks. So what you can do is look at the end of the stick to make sure that motion is as circular as possible. Good, and ease off, and relax. Good. Now, we're gonna get into the Dumpy squat. So I'm gonna change this angle just a little bit, folks. So the main focus of this, or as we get into it, is we wanna make sure that, again, we are abducting the hips. So that's gonna look more like driving the knees out. However, when you do this, I want your entire foot pressing into the floor. So those toes should not be lifting. You shouldn't be shifting back and forth. You want to keep all that weight centrated. So you want your entire foot pressing into the floor, not the outer, not the heel, not the front foot or the forefoot. We want the entire foot here. Now, as we get into this, what I'm looking for, what I want you to really, really pay attention to is how your hips are actually moving and reacting when we get into this drill. And so typically we use the Dumpy squat to kind of warm up the squat movement. However, adding in the element of driving those knees out quite a bit more should add in a little bit more glute activation, particularly when we get to the bottom of the squat. And so I'm actually going to move the camera in just a smidge more. Sorry, folks. Now, so we're going to line up the same way we usually do for the Dumpy squat here. I'm going to have the stick lined up with my center line, pushing up into the squat rack or ceiling. And I want to keep my hands in front. Now my hands are not too far in front of my body here, maybe about a couple inches. And I want to keep my hands roughly about belly button height, but you can adjust your hands as you need to. Now from here, what I want to do, I want to create that proximal stability, which is going to look like driving the stick up into the rack at about 50% tension. You should be feeling those erector tissues turn on. You should feel nice and tall. Now go whatever squat stance is most comfortable. Now what I want you to do from here is I want you to really push your toes into the floor. Not curl your toes in, but press them down into the floor. You should be feeling those arch tissues activate. Now from here, I want you to drive yourself down nice and easy. Get as deep into the squat as you can manage, still pushing up. And now from this position, I want you to drive those knees out hard, still pushing your entire foot into the floor. Breathe. Come up. And ease off. Good. What you should be feeling is those lateral hip tissues and those deep glute muscles really, really working hard here. When you're at the bottom, driving those knees out is what kind of connects a little bit more to the glute, but those stabilizers in the hips. So we're going to do that again. So drive up 50%, drive those toes into the floor, slowly drive yourself down into the squat, get as deep as you can, drive those knees out. Breathe. 3, 2, 1. Come up. And ease off. Good. And we're going to do that again. Drive the sticks up, or stick up, singular stick. 50%. Drive those toes into the floor. Drive them down hard. Slowly lower yourself into the squat. Push yourself down. Good tension. Drive the knees out. Breathe. 3, 2, 1, up, and ease off. Excellent, good. So, we're warming up for squats. That's a really, really good way to kind of get those hips open. But again, we're trying to connect to those glutes, get them to fire as much as we possibly can, particularly the really deep part of that squat there. Now, we're gonna get into our hip lift offs. So I'm gonna place stick down, and this is where having a bench would be very useful. Sorry. But I'm gonna go with the box today. So I'm gonna have the box at 24 inches. And again, this is this hip flexion. And so where I'm gonna start at, for me at least, is at this point, my knee is actually above my hip. So I'm deep in the hip flexion for me, but depending on your mobility, again, that's gonna depend on how mobile and strong you are. This might not be all that much of a challenge. So what you can do to add a little bit more of a challenge is have something to raise the height just a smidge. If you wanna start off lower, that's absolutely fine. Now, with this drill, we're gonna hover our front leg. The main thing is we need to keep a good posture. Also, we don't want to try to get rid of as much compensations as we can. I'm actually going to turn this to the side. And so, lining up, I'm going to have my foot on the bench. Now, I want to have my foot close because this actually allows me to be in a more upright position, right? If your foot's behind, like so, this now changes how you can actually effectively lift that hip off. So I want my foot close to the box. Now the box is pretty wide, so I'm actually gonna have the sticks on the outside of the box, but notice that they are angled in towards me. This goes with that natural arm drive. So this is gonna allow me to keep a little bit better of an upright position. Now from here, hands are roughly about shoulder height. I'm gonna drive those sticks down 60%, and now I'm gonna hover. I'm gonna bring my knee up closer to my torso, hold that position, 3, 2, 1, ease off, and relax. Now, when we do that, again, we wanna make sure we're not getting a whole lot of movement, but that down leg, this leg here, needs to stay straight, right? If I move or if I start to bend, that's where that compensation comes in. All right, let's get 2 more repetitions here. Drive the sticks down, 60%, hover, breathe, 3, 2, 1, ease off, excellent. We're gonna go one more time, then we're gonna switch sides. Drive both sticks down, 60%, hover, 3, 2, 1, and down. Ease off and relax. Good. Now we're going to switch sides. So I'm going to kind of turn this a little bit. Now ideally, when we're doing this kind of drill, you can increase the height, but if you can't increase the height, you want to try to increase that duration of time. So start with about 5 to 8 seconds and then kind of go from there. Go from here, same thing, drive both sticks down, 60%, hover, 3, 2, 1, and ease off. Excellent, good. We got 2 more here. Arms straight, drive both sticks down, hover, 3, 2, 1, ease off. Let's go one more time, folks. Drop both sticks down, hover, keep that knee up. 3, 2, 1, and ease off. Excellent, good. We're still gonna use a box because now I wanna get into the adductors. Now, when it comes to adductors, we're just gonna be creating isometric tension by driving our foot into the box. Now, how high it is depends on you. It also depends on how much of a challenge you want. So if you're someone that has sometimes a little bit of groin issues, this is a good way to kind of slowly get the adductors a little stronger. So I'm gonna have my foot, and it's still, for me, it's still on a 24-inch side. I don't feel the need to go higher than this. You can also go a little lower or higher. Again, this varies on your mobility. Now, from here, I wanna make sure that this leg is straight and also that you're upright, right? If you're like this, you need to go a little lower, right? You wanna be able to get to a nice, good upright position. So my right leg, this is directly under my right shoulder. I'm gonna have the sticks in front. Now from here, we're gonna drive the foot into the box. So I wanna push both sticks down 60%, so drive down, sticks are angled in towards you. Now I'm gonna push my left foot into the box at 50%, keeping that leg straight. Again, like I'm trying to bring my foot in towards my other leg. 3, 2, 1, ease off and relax. So we're trying to get this leg to come down this way. Let's go again. Arm straight, drive both sticks down, 60%, and I'll drive the foot into the box, 60%. Try to keep that leg straight. 3, 2, 1, and ease off. Good. We're gonna go one more time. Drop both sticks down, drive that foot into the box. 3, 2, 1, and ease off. Excellent. Now we're gonna switch sides. And I'll actually do this from the side here. Foot's on the box. Sticks are angled in. Nice, good, tall position. Drop both sticks down. Drive that foot into the box, 60%. 3, 2, 1, and ease off. Let's go two more times. Drop both sticks down. Keep that right leg straight. Drive it into the box. Breathe. 3, 2, 1, and ease off. Let's go one more time. Arm straight. Drive sticks down. And drive that foot into the box. Adduct that hip. 3, 2, 1, and ease off. Excellent. Now we're gonna move the box to the side. It's no longer needed for now, or actually for the rest of the class. Now, I just kind of want to load the hip a little bit more. We're gonna get into a single leg RDL, okay? But what we're gonna do here, as we get into the single leg RDL, we're gonna lift each stick to kind of create a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm gonna go with my left foot first. We're gonna drive those toes into the floor. Same thing we did for the Dumpy squat, right? We want to create as much stability as we can. So drive those toes into the ground, so push them down. At the bottom of the sticks, about roughly a foot in front of the line of my toes, I'm gonna hover my right foot. Now from here, I'm going to slowly hinge, driving my hands out, slight bend to that left knee, and now I'm gonna lift the right stick, hold this position. You wanna try to keep that right hip facing towards the floor. Now I'm gonna lift the left stick, Good. Place the left stick down. Lift both sticks. Excellent. Place both sticks down. Come up. Ease off. Let's go into that one more time, then we'll switch sides. Up to drive those toes down the left side, hover that right foot. We're gonna hinge. Hands out, good. Lift the right stick. Make sure you're driving those toes down nice and hard. Place it down, lift the left stick. Good, place it down, lift both. Good, place both sticks down, come up, ease off. We're gonna switch sides now. So I'll kind of turn here. Right foot, and again, whatever hip is hovering off the floor, or whatever foot is hovering off the floor, you want that hip facing down towards the floor. It's really common for people to open the hip up. As they start to hinge, you want to keep it facing down. So we're going to start with that right foot here. Drive those toes into the floor. Going to hinge. Lift the left stick. Good. Lift the right. Excellent. Lift both. Place them down, come up, ease off. We're gonna go one more time. Drive those right toes into the floor, hinge, drive those hands out. Lift the left stick. Good, lift the right. Good, now lift both. Breathe, place both sticks down, and ease off. Excellent, good. So that's the strength training aspect. Now we're gonna start to get into the cool down and the stretching. So again, you guys have a Bulgarian split squat machine here. If you happen to have a bench is totally fine. Or you can do it from a standing position. If you happen to have the box, you can do the calf stretch from a standing position. I personally just like to do this just to really open up the hips, because I feel like it's one of the better drills to do so, just my opinion. So, we're gonna spend quite a bit of time in the stretch. So we're going to use both long sticks here. And I'm going to start with my left hip. So I'm going to take my left foot, place it on top, and I'm going to drop that left knee down towards the floor, or onto the floor. Now, from here, I'm just going to start by having the sticks angled out in front, sticks are on my shoulders. Now, the reason why I'm having you do this is we can actually create tension in the sticks by driving our hands towards the floor and getting our torso up nice and high, right? But as we're in this position, remember we want to posteriorly tilt your pelvis. So posterior tilt, rolling the bottom of your pelvis forward, top of your pelvis back, right? That's what activates or gets into that stretch a little bit better. Now from here, I'm not driving my foot into the apparatus, we'll call it that. My foot's just relaxing there. So what I'm going to do from this position is I'm going to do a posterior tilt, and then I'm going to drive my hands down, or pull my hands down, or pull the sticks in towards me. And I'm just going to hold this position here. I'm going to feel a big stretch on the front of that hip and the quad, specifically the rectus femoris, especially if you're really tight there. Breathe. 3, 2, 1. Gonna ease off. We're gonna stay on this side here. I'm gonna take the sticks, and I'm gonna bring the bottom of the sticks right about mid-thigh here. Have my hands up high, And now I'm gonna drive my foot down towards the floor, so I'm getting that knee extension, and I'm gonna do a posterior tilt again. And I'm gonna try to drive my hips back a little bit further towards my heel. And I'm gonna hold this position here. My hands are up nice and high, all right? You can always work them up a little higher if you like, but the main objective is we're trying to stay in a nice tall spine position. And now from here, I'm gonna rotate towards my front leg. So I'm rotating towards my right leg here. And as I do that, I get an increased stretch on that left hip. Breathe. Now I'm gonna rotate back to center, and I'm gonna rotate towards my back leg, which can get into that short adductor a little bit. Gonna come back to center. I'm gonna ease off. I'm gonna assist myself up using the sticks. Now we're gonna switch sides. So I'm gonna go right foot on, right knee down. Okay? I'm gonna return the sticks to being back in front. So from here, we're gonna do that same thing. I'm gonna do a posterior pelvic tilt. And I'm gonna pull my hands in towards me. Nice, good, tall chest position. Breathe. Deep breaths. Don't hold your breath. And we're going to ease off. Excellent. Take the sticks, bring them in. Hands are up nice and high. Now we're going to drive that back foot down towards the floor. Posterior tilt. You can shift hips back a little bit if you want more of a stretch. I'm going to rotate towards my front leg, so I'm going to rotate to the left. Excellent. So rotate back to center. Now I'm going to rotate to the right. Good. Going to come back to center. Ease off and assist yourself up with the sticks. So I may have spoken a little prematurely earlier. So if you have the box or a bench, this would be a perfect time to grab it. We're only going to use one stick for this, and this is going to be for the hamstrings. Okay. So we're going to kind of combine the bow and arrow to get into a hamstring stretch. And so I'm going to go with a little bit of a taller box here. And I'm going to have my right foot up on the box, and I want to have my heel on the box here. Now, ankle needs to be dorsiflexed. Do not plantar flex your ankle. You want to dorsiflex it, and you want to have a slight bend to the knee. Now, if you go with a straight knee, you might get into a little bit more of the back of the knee, but not access the hamstrings that much. So just kind of be aware of that. If you're not getting into the hamstring, you might need to change the angle or how much flexion you have in that knee. I'm going to have the stick in my right hand. I'm going to have it in line with my knee here. My left hand is going to come up over the top, thumb facing down. Now, the direction I'm driving in is going towards my foot, right? Not out this way, but I'm going in the same direction as my foot is. And so from here, right hand's on the roughly around the center of the stick. I'm going to drive that right hand out, reaching out here. Now again, this is going to feel like a pretty significant stretch on that right hamstring, but you're also going to get some lengthening on that left lateral line. Going to ease off. Good. I'm going to rotate the stick a bit. I'm going to do that same thing again. I'm going to drive those hands out. Breathe. 3, 2, 1. Ease off and relax. Now we're going to switch sides. left foot is up, heel on, dorsiflexing that ankle. The knee's in line with the, my fault. The stick's in line with the knee. Right hand comes up, over the top, thumb facing down. We're gonna create tension. Breathe. Excellent. Ease off. Good. Rotate the stick a bit. We're going to do it one more time. Extend those hands out. Three, two, one. Slowly ease off. Excellent. We're going to get into one last thing. That's going to be the slap shot, folks. Kind of want to hit a little bit of everything all at once. So we're going to still go with one stick. And I'm going to take the stick, place it behind my mid-back. I'm going to go with the relatively wide stance. Just like for the ninja flow, the stance is going to depend on your mobility, or whatever feels the most comfortable. And again, for this one, we are focusing or putting a lot of emphasis on pulling the stick apart to create more tension and rotation here. So the amount of tension we're going to generate in a pulling apart is about 30%. Now from here, I'm going to have my toes facing forward. Okay, you can go with a slight toe out angle if you like. This depends on you. I'm going to go with a slight knee bend, and I'm going to hinge my hips back. And I'm just going to hold that position. So this is going to feel real good on the hamstrings. So let's just hang out here for a second. Just kind of focus on your breathing, relaxing. Allow those hamstrings to kind of stretch out a bit. I'm going to rotate the right end of the stick down towards my center line. If you can get to your center line, get to that position. If you have to go here, that's fine too. So I'm going to get to that center line here. I'm going to pull the stick apart. Remember, we're at 30%. So it should be a moderate amount of tension here. And now I'm going to lunge to my right, driving off that left leg. Good, and now I'm going to lunge to the left, driving off the right leg. It's okay if this bottom arm bends, it doesn't need to be straight. Lunge to the right, drive off that left leg here. Lunge to the left. Back to center, come back to neutral. Rotate that left end of the stick down. Same thing, pull apart 30%. Lunge to the left, drive off that right leg. Now lunge to the right, drive off the left leg. Lunge to the left. Lunge to the right. Come back to center. Come to neutral. Squeeze those glutes to stand up. Wiggle those feet in. Nice and easy. And that concludes today's stick mobility class. Thank you everybody for joining me. Hope everybody had a good class. I appreciate you spending some time with me on the Saturday. I will be sure to catch you all next weekend. Have a good one.